Okay, welcome to this video about thesis statements. In it, I'm going to go through, give you some definitions, ways to think about thesis statements, examples to help illustrate, and most of all, 5 specific ways that you should avoid doing your thesis statement. So here we go. What is a thesis statement? A thesis of an analytical paper is an idea about your subject, a theory that explains what some feature or features of your subject mean. A strong thesis comes from carefully examining and questioning your subject to arrive at some point about its meaning that would not have been immediately obvious to your readers. So, what does all of this mean? That's what the thesis is answering. That's coincidentally a definition of the word analysis, describing what something means. A weak thesis either makes no claim or makes a claim that does not need proving, such as a statement of fact or an opinion with which virtually all of your readers would most likely agree before reading your paper. For example, exercise is good for you. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Let's just dive right in. So many elementary schools are going to a year-round schedule. So is this a good, a bad, or a non-thesis statement? Isn't that just a statement of fact? Either they are going to a year-round schedule or they're not. You can't really argue with that. If it was a little bit more controversial, or if they were going to, many elementary schools should go to a year-round schedule, okay, that would be something that you could debate both sides of, which is another key point of, especially the persuasive essay. When we get to that point, be remembering this comment that a good thesis statement will have both sides arguable. So this side, people can't say, no, they're not, because, well, technically, if they're not, then they could. But assuming that this is true, you can't argue, well, no, I just deny what you're saying. Either it's true or it's not. Near-death experiences signify that an afterlife exists. Notice in this example some of the cautious wording. So signify. So it's not that afterlife exists because near-death experiences, but it's near-death experiences signify. Can you argue both sides of that? Definitely. Um, is this something that's readily obvious? Maybe not necessarily. Maybe people had heard about it, but your paper's going to go into it. This is a topic that I would be interested in reading about. Okay, so smoking is bad for your health. Um, to all you smokers out there, I apologize, but it's kind of just not a arguable point. I mean, there have been so many studies and so many things that have proven that, especially where this is such a vague one anyway, bad for your health. What is that? I mean, that could cover any number of topics. So if it were more specific, what ways is it bad for your health? What parts of your health? What do we mean by smoking? Are we talking just about well, we'll just leave it at that. But you know what I mean, where more details would help, but also less just in the face of all of the research that has been done. Female students learn better in all women colleges. So, again, this seems like it might be the top one, where it's just a matter of fact, but I doubt you're going to have agreement amongst all of your. This doesn't seem like a fact based topic to me, where it seems like different colleges, different students, all kinds of variables might make this more complicated than just elementary schools. Yes, they are, or no, they aren't. So this one I would say is more in the good category. Troublesome aspects of government. Well, that's not even a complete sentence. So, and even still, troublesome aspects of government not as specific as it probably should be. I like foreign cars more than domestic cars. Again, a matter of opinion, not of fact. It should be, these are, or because, can you argue with I like foreign cars more than it's like, no, you don't. You don't like foreign cars. There's no way to argue with that. So rather than that, you might have foreign cars are better than domestic cars because, or whatever. Okay, so here are those 5 weak thesis statements that I mentioned. Thesis statements that make no claim. So an example, this paper reflects on my trip to Belize. So again, is anybody gonna say, no, this paper doesn't do that. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You're just describing, okay. It's more like I'm going to tell you what this paper does later. I'm not telling you what I learned on my trip to Belize. I'm just telling you what this paper does. And this type of statement can be okay, but not as a thesis statement. So a solution might be, while I originally went to Belize to escape my stressful life, during the trip I realized that I was taking my stress with me. So that's making a specific claim. Not just, okay, I learned something on my trip, but this is what I learned. And that's a thesis statement you can build your paper around. Okay, number 2. Thesis statements that are obviously true or statements of fact. And we've already talked about this. So an example would be, my skiing accident taught me that being prepared is better than not being prepared. So, wow, is anybody going to say, no, it's better to not be prepared than it is to be prepared? Maybe for surprise birthday parties, but in actual life, no, that's not going to happen. So the local ski resort needs to post avalanche warnings more clearly. That's something that, you know, some people may say, no, they don't need to, or yes, it's needed, but why aren't they doing it? It's obviously an issue. Number 3, thesis statements that restate conventional wisdom. So conventional wisdom are just the ideas that are floating around out there that a lot of people accept, but that might be not reasonably applied to your topic, or that are just too general and are actually just old wives' tales, or just not true. So, for example, because America has the largest economy, other countries should model their currency off the United States money system. So, the conventional wisdom is bigger equals better. While the United States dollar is one of the most widely used currencies, it is far from the most convenient or efficient. So, acknowledging that they, may have a point, but have you ever thought about that for blind people who, I mean, how do they tell the difference between the sizes? Um, Another example might be about pennies. That I've seen some studies recently about how the penny is not really adding to the economy, but is costing more money than it's saving. Okay, so thesis statements that offer personal conviction as a basis for the claim. So, for example, Lost is the best TV show of all time. So you can kind of see the author's strong opinions being the sole support for this topic, when we all know that Seinfeld is the best TV show of all time. Okay, so maybe a better example might be, effective marketing is a major factor in the popularity of the TV show Lost. Is that true? I don't know, but you get the idea, where um, it's not the only factor. It's a major factor that you may not have thought of. It may not have been immediately obvious. You may have just thought it was only the show Lost. However, this paper is going to be focusing on marketing and the role that it plays in the success of a TV show. Um, that's much more provable and less opinionated than the top example. Okay, thesis statements that make an overly broad claim. So here we go. The media ruins girls' self-image. And I've actually gotten this as an essay, as a thesis before. So the problem with this, because you may think, okay, well, it's making a specific claim. It's not completely based on opinion. I mean, in a lot of ways, it fits the category of a good topic. However, each of the words fit into so many different categories that it almost becomes meaningless. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So media. What kind of media are we talking about? So we could be talking about radio, TV, movies, music, radio. Did I say radio? Newspapers, magazines, commercials. You know what I mean. The list goes on. Commercials are lumped in there, and that's what I assume they're referring to. But also, couldn't Christian radio be lumped in with that? Do you think this author meant to imply that a, a Christian radio ruins girls' self-image? Does that seem like that's something that they would mean to? But technically, that fits under the category of media. So another problem. So it's by this thesis, it's implied that it's just the media that ruins girls' self-image. It's not making room for abusive parents, which I would say, does that play a bigger role than media? I don't know. But according to this thesis, it's all the media that ruins girls' self-image. That's what it's implying. So, girl could be broken down by age. Are we talking about 90-year-old women? Are we talking about infants? Um, are we talking, so ethnicity, location? So are we talking about in third world countries where they don't have access to media? I mean, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Sexual orientation. I mean, there's a lot of ways to break this down. Self-image. What do you mean by that? What does that look like? So this thesis, as it is so broad that it's kind of lost a lot of its meaning. Here's an example of the solution. The practice of using photoshopped ads by the majority of beauty product marketers is a major factor in the recent increased rates of depression of women in the United States, most notably 12 to 14-year-old girls. So that gives a much more specific idea of what is ruined, what is media, what is self-image, what are girls, this goes into that much more clearly. Okay, so that finishes our discussion of thesis statements. So now you know what thesis statements are supposed to do, how you can avoid poor thesis statements, be thinking about what you can do for your unit essay. And I'll see you in the comments.